First studio visit I ever did was in 1993 when I was in high school still. And I went to visit id when they were just finishing up Doom.
Where were you living at that stage?
I was in Toronto.
So you went all the way to...
And my mother flew down with me because she was like, "What's going on? All these guys in Texas invited you down to go hang out with them." And I still remember we were at this like hotel in Mesquite, Texas, and this guy pulls up in this red Ferrari to like pick me up for the day. I worked on the first Video Game Awards show ever in 1994 when I was, 14 or something, called Cybermania 94.
That's a fantastically 94 name for
that. And you can watch it on YouTube. So it was hosted by Leslie Nielsen, the late great Leslie Nielsen, and Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement, live from Universal Studios. But so I worked on that because there's a friend of my dad's in Toronto was the guy who was producing it, and they called me up and said, "Hey, we don't know anything about video games. Can you help us make this show?" And so I got to write the narration for the nominee packages that William Shatner read.
Super Street Fighter II, journey round the world on a quest for supremacy. Only the strong survive this one.
I got to go down to the show with my dad in LA and put on a suit and like see all these game developers. And I think as a young kid, it made a huge impression on me that there was this kind of like celebration of games. And you know, my parents are in the film business and both members of the Motion Picture Academy. So I always knew, and my parents always talk about, I think, how much the Oscars meant to them. And I always sort of said like, hey, well, what's the equivalent of that for the video game world? And when I went to that show, I think I was impressed with the fact that, hey, like Jay Wilbur from id was up there like accepting an award for Doom presented by like Hilary Swank and Matthew Perry. And it was just it made a big impression on me as a kid. And I think it also, selfishly, I think I realized that my dad actually sort of appreciated like, hey, there's something going on with this world of games. Like it's kind of like, it's real, right? It's like physical, because so much of gaming was like virtual, right? And I was a kid who would sit at home at my computer playing games, but my friends would play them, but it didn't feel like connected to the larger world. And when I went to that show, even though it was like totally silly, but it was like, at least, there's like Will Arnett was like reading out cheat codes, and like if you find it on YouTube, it's like hilarious to watch back. And I had my credit, interactive product specialist, in the scroll at the end. So anyways, it's a long way of sort of getting back to like why I devote myself to that. And so I think over the years, a lot of my career has been about how can I elevate the medium of games and get more respect for the people that make games, right? So like behind the games, what we called, that GameSpot series, like I came up with that when I was in my college dorm room when I was a freshman. VH1 premiered this series called Behind the Music, and I was like a freshman and I didn't want to go to some party or something, so I was sitting there and like watched the Behind the Music on Milli Vanilli, and I was like, why isn't there something that would like tell the story of like, game developers? I think my career has always been about like focusing on the people that make the games, not just the games. And I think Game Awards is sort of the ultimate manifestation of that, of like, let's honor the people that make games, not just the products, right? So I think, it just sort of naturally evolved, right? I sort of did that in the 90s and then kind of went away. And then when I was at Spike and G4, they were doing award shows and I was kind of involved in that. And look, it was always a massive compromise when those shows were being done. That was like very frustrating to me, right? So I was kind of throughout my 20s was kind of working on those, and it was always like, wanted to like punch something because I was like, oh God, like I can't believe like this is how we're doing things.
Is it difficult to try and produce a show that speaks to as many people as possible?
Yeah, look, the challenge always is like, who is your audience? And I think the problem for a long time when I was doing the Spike show and others is they were going after what I call the mythical mainstream viewer, which was this idea that like, we got to get everyone to tune in. And sort of like in movie marketing, it's like 4 quadrants. You got to kind of go after absolutely everyone. So they'd be like, we got to get the Jersey Shore cast there because the Jersey Shore is big and their fans are going to tune in for this. And we got to get Kim Kardashian there because we need ratings and she's a huge thing. And it's sort of like they were kind of trying to cast too wide of a net. And the thing that I've always said is that gamers are like tens of millions of people strong around the world. Like it's not really that niche if you can just get gamers, like Fortnite would have had like 70-something million players in the month of August playing it. So it's like, if I could get a fraction of those viewers, like, we're good. We don't really need like all these, we don't need the Shawn Mendes fans to tune in. And that was just sort of a function of like, the challenge when you're doing kind of TV mainstream stuff, is you sort of had to like get all these people in to kind of make it feel like it was pop culture. And that, had impact also because like the network executives and the sales people like didn't really understand games, but I was like, oh, it's really cool you booked, this celebrity to show up. So it had credibility. So I got the kind of the equation of why that had to be done that way. But for us, yeah, it's really like, there are lots of gamers out there, but we're thinking that I think all boats will rise as more people play games and sort of like tune in to be a part of it. So I think over the years, I saw how important it was to the industry to have a great award show. And then when I finally sort of had this opportunity to do my own thing, it was very liberating to be able to like make this celebration for games and sort of do it on my own terms and author it, right? And as people will tell you, like Game Awards, it's like, pretty much all aspects, like, I finance it, I sell it, I promote it, I book it. It's all, it's kind of all me driving it, which is good and bad, but I'm sort of so passionate about it. Mostly because I think it's a really important thing to do, and I think longer term about sort of my legacy, and I hope is something that's going to sort of stand the test of time. If we're only in year 5, think of what the Oscars was in year 5, right? And we're also growing in a big way. So like, when we get to year 20 or year 30, I hope it's going to be bigger than the Oscars. It feels weird for me to say this, but it feels like we're finally going to make the show that I've sort of always wanted to make this year. And even though I think we've done good shows in the past, there's always been kind of compromises from a budget perspective or from a content perspective. But I think that first year still will always be close to my heart, because that's where I basically had to put, all my money on the line and everything, and just say, hey, like, I believe in making this happen. And then we were able to do it, and it was, I think, a success. Although I look back at that show and I'm just like, oh my God, it's like, I'm surprised we did it. There's so many issues with it, and that's the thing, is like, I get excited every year because I think we're getting better, and like this year I think is hopefully will be our best show yet.
And the Game Award goes to... Read it, boy.